Let's bring out our reporters now, Syan Vallance on the Gold Coast and Bruce MacKenzie, who's in Byron Bay for us. To you first, Syan, how was the night on the Gold Coast? We hear it was pretty wild last night.
Yeah, the wind has been relentless. It's just been noisy, keeping people awake. But thankfully, over the last half an hour or so, the emergency warning here on the Gold Coast has been downgraded to a watch and act. That does not mean that the area is out of the woods. It only means that people don't have to be quite as pedantic about staying indoors because it has been downgraded to that watch and act. They still have to monitor conditions. That's what the City of Gold Coast is now saying people should do, because there is still a flood warning and there is thunderstorms expected throughout the day, and with that relentless rain that we just heard from the Bureau of Meteorology about. And so it was a wild night. We've heard from some people who have had trees come down in their homes. We haven't had any reports of people being injured at this point, which is fantastic news, but more than 1,000 calls to the SES overnight, and they'll be responding to those calls when they can. At the moment, they're only heading to emergencies. There's also been downgrades for those 2 emergency warnings that were for flooding. They are now at watch and act levels as well. So even though the situation's still serious, it's not quite as precarious as it was before, which is really good news for a lot of people who've spent a really anxious few days and a very sleepless night last night, Bridget.
Yeah, and Syan, we did hear, unfortunately, that it could be up to a week, possibly, before some people see power restored.
And that is going to impact a lot of people. There are almost 120,000 households in the Gold Coast who are without power at the moment. That is almost half of the homes in the city, and it just won't be possible for crews to respond to all of those until, as you say, around a week's time. We've heard from Energex, and they've essentially said that a lot of the power outages are due to trees falling over, power lines down, and to do all that repair work safely is going to take time. So people are asked to be patient. This is why there was so much warning about the preparation. This is why it's so important, because some people will have to be using that food that they've brought and using the torches, battery-powered radios and that sort of thing. So even though the emergency warning's been downgraded, there is still some serious problems, and the rain and wind is going to continue. Although we understand the wind gusts will start to dwindle through the day, there are still thunderstorm warnings. So the Gold Coast has been battered, it will continue to be battered, and people are being asked to stay on alert and monitor those conditions throughout today and even into tomorrow, Bridget.
Thanks, Syan. I'll bring you in now, Bruce MacKenzie. Where are the areas of most concern for authorities in northern New South Wales?
Well, a lot of attention might be turning inland. I'm here on the coast, as you can see at the moment, where Alfred is feeling and sounding every bit like the nasty X. People are waking up across the region after what was a pretty wet and wild night. Cape Byron here was lashed by winds of up to 110 kilometres an hour. The noise that you might be able to hear in the background is chainsaws and wood chippers. A lot of the beautiful hoop pines here on the beachfront have been shredded by the wind. Some have been cut down as a precaution. They were tilting at really severe angles throughout the afternoon and evening. Further down the main street, we've seen this gorgeous, huge fig tree that used to provide shade to the beer garden of one of the local pubs. It's been there for decades. It's now lying on its side. It just gives you an idea. It might now be an ex-tropical cyclone, but it's still a really severe weather system that we're dealing with here. But as I mentioned, a lot of the attention will now turn inland because of that rainfall. We have major flood warnings for the river catchments right throughout the northern rivers, stretching down into the mid-north coast. I can't go through them all, there are just too many, but I can tell you that major flooding is expected in parts of the Tweed River catchment and the Richmond River catchment. And crucially, for a national audience, you will know Lismore. It's got that unwanted reputation as perhaps the flood capital of Australia. Well, the Wilsons River runs through there, and we are expecting major flooding there later on this morning. Now, crucially, the Wilsons River is tipped to reach a peak of 10.6 metres at the moment. That's almost the exact height of the levee that protects the CBD there. So it's going to be an absolutely nerve-wracking wait for people in that community and for communities right across the northern rivers as we wait to see how this plays out. Now, there are 40 emergency evacuation notices in place for communities between Tweed Heads and Port Macquarie. Once again, I can't run through them all for you. If you even flick onto the Hazards Near Me app, I've been telling people that it looks like some kids have spilt their lollies on the screen. It is just covered with red and orange triangles. That's how many alerts that we've got right at the moment. I can tell you that the Pacific Highway is closed in two places. It's closed between Bangalow, just to the south and west of Byron Bay, all the way up to Chindra, which is just there at the Queensland border. Also closed for a section just south of Ballina. We've got almost 40,000 homes without power. No clear idea of when that's going to be restored. There are communities without phone and internet services as well. Right from the start of this, the advice from the SES has been to stay indoors, and for the first time since this started, we're not seeing people lining the shores here to check out the effects of this monster swell. Most people, at least, he says, as someone walks behind him in the background, first person from the public I've seen all day, I've got to tell you, most people are definitely heeding that warning and staying indoors.